I welcome you to today's music lesson, where we shall be learning dotted notes. The lesson objectives being that by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to know the value and calculate the value of a dotted note. The idea of a dotted note is still within our learning of a musical beat. And he said a musical note is a measure of value of time in music. So a note, as we said earlier, it is a measure of value of time in music. The same note can be dotted. That is, we can place a dot on a note, whereby the dot will take half the measure of the preceding note. For example, I've written for you this note here. It's a minim. And on the right side, I have placed a dot. Here's the minim. And this is the dot. The minim is a half note, meaning when I place this dot here, it will take half the value of this minim. Half the value of a minim, I know you remember that it is a crotchet, that is the quarter note. Meaning, when we insert a dot, we insert it on the right side. This dot will take half the value of this minim, meaning the whole note, the whole beat should be played equivalent to a whole minim and half the minim. That is half a note and quarter a note. So it should be played half a note and a quarter a note. Another example. Let's take an example of a quarter note, the crotchet. The dot always, we put it on the right side. Put a dot here. So this retains its value of half a note, but this one will take half the value of the crotchet. Meaning, when we play this as a beat, we'll play a full beat of a crotchet and we extend it to a quiver that is half the crotchet, for us to play it together as a quarter a note and an eighth of a note. Another example, we use a crotchet and we dot it. This dot on the right side will take half the value of this preceding note, that is the quiver. Meaning, this will be an eighth note and this will carry the value of a 16th. That is, this is the eighth and this will be the 16th. As you have noted, the dot is written on the right side and it will always take half the value of the preceding note. That is, if it's a minim, we play the beat as long as a minim and half a minim, which is a crotchet. As we have noted, a note has an equivalent value of a rest. As such, a rest can also be dotted. In a similar case, when we dot a rest, the dot carries half the value of the dot. I mean, the dot carries half the value of the preceding rest. Meaning, the silence will be equal to the whole value of the preceding rest and the dot, which is a half of the preceding rest. So I will give you an example. This is a rest of a semi-brief with a dot. A semi-brief, we usually draw it like this. You know, it's this similar, this knot. It's drawn like this. And so this is rest. If we dot this knot, we shall have the semi-brief plus a meaning. This is the value. The same case applies here. If we dot the rest of a semi-brief, we shall have to play the rest of a semi-brief and the rest of a meaning. That is, the silence will be that long. The size of a semi-brief and the size of a meaning. This is the rest of a meaning. Is the rest of a meaning. When we dot it, it will carry the whole value of a meaning, which is this one, plus half the value of a meaning, which is a crochet, this one. The silence will be the size of a whole meaning and a crochet. Similarly, this is a crochet rest. We say that a crochet has two structures of rest. There's this one and there's this one. The improper 7 and this other one that looks like a 3 or a Z, depending on how you view it. The silence will be the size of a whole crochet plus half a crochet, which is a quiver. A whole crochet plus the rest of a quiver. So the silence will be as long as a crochet and a quiver. Another example, the rest of a quiver. We can dot it to the right. Meaning, the value of this quiver will be extended by half. Silence, half of a quiver is a semiquiver. We had seen that when we were learning about the rhythm. This is the value of a whole quiver plus extended to the value of a semiquiver. So it will be just a slightly longer than a quiver. So as you have also noted with the rest, the dot is written on the right side. That makes it carry half the value of the preceding rest. There are two modes of dotting notes. That is, there can be a single dot placed on a note or double dots placed on a note, and even dots could be increased depending on the values that are needed on a particular bead. But the most common are the single dot and the double dot. Let us look at the single dot. For example, we have just looked at the single dotting, but let us repeat. We've said a single dot immediately on the right side of a note. It will carry half the value of the preceding note. For example, this is a crochet. When we dot a crochet, it will give us the value of a crochet plus a quiver. When we dot a quiver, it will give us the value of a quiver plus a semiquiver. When we dot the rest of a crochet, it will give us the rest of a crochet plus the rest of a quiver. You know, these are the values. When we dot the rest of our meaning. It will give us the rest of a meaning plus the rest of a crochet. That is half the value. And the trend continues. What if you dot a semiquaver? It will give you the value of a semiquaver plus a semi-demiquaver. And the rest also proceed the same way. The rest of a semiquaver has two flags dotted on the right. It will give you the semiquaver plus a semi-demiquaver rest. And the trend continues. But what I would want you to understand is that the single note, that the single dot will always take half the value of the preceding note or rest, the preceding beat or the rest of a beat. Let us look at the idea of double dots. We should understand these two things, the value of the two dots. Double dots will have the following values. The first dot will have half the value of the preceding note, while the second dot will carry half the value of the preceding dot. See here, this is the rest of a meaning. We have double dotted it. So this first dot will have the value, half the value of the meaning. And this second dot will carry half the value of this dot, meaning this will have the value of a 16th. This is half a note. This is quarter a note. This will be the value of an eighth. This will be half of an eighth. That is half of a quarter, meaning it's an eighth of a note. And let us illustrate it this way. This half a note, which is the full value of the meaning. This is half the meaning, which is this quarter note. This one. And this one is eighth a note, which is a quaver, which is half the value of this. Half the value of this. So the length of this will be a half plus a quarter plus an eighth. A meaning plus a crochet plus a quaver. The second example. This is the rest of a crochet. Double dot. This first dot will carry half the value of this crochet, meaning it will be eighth. This second dot will carry half the value of this preceding dot, which will be a 16th. Meaning this knot will give us quarter, which is a crochet, an eighth, which is a quaver, and a 16th, which is a semi-quaver. Another example, which is similar to this is the rest of a crochet also, double dotted. This dot will carry half the value of the preceding dot. This being a quarter, meaning this one will be an eighth, and this second dot will carry half the value of this dot, meaning it will be a 16th. The same as what we've done here. Meaning this will be a quarter. It will give us the value of a quarter, not the crochet. It will give us eighth, which is half of this, this is a quiver, and this is the 16th, which is half of this, which is a semiquiver. Let us look at the notes themselves now, other than the rest. This is a meaning. Where we started here, this is a meaning. This half the meaning, this quarter the meaning. Whole meaning, crochet, and quiver. That's the value. Let us look at this other example. This is a crochet, double dotted crochet. This crochet will be long, longer more than a crochet, longer more than a quiver, which will be a quiver plus a semi-quiver plus a semi-demi-quiver. And the extension continues that way until at a time when the beat will arrive at a position where it can be equated to the next note, you know, at a point when the beat can be written equivalent to the next note in value. So I would like us to note this very keenly. Double dots are not very common when writing music, but the values of double dots are there, but not used most of the time. The first dot will always take half the value of the preceding note or rest, and the second dot will always take half the value of the preceding dot. Let us do a simple exercise on the value of dotted notes. On the board, we can see a series of written notes, and I would like us to start with the first. The first one is a dotted semibreve. This dotted semibreve will have the length of the following notes: a whole semibreve plus a meaning. That's the value. Because this dot will always carry half of this. This is a whole note. This dot should be half a note. We go to the next. This is half a note. Definitely half of half should be a quarter. Should be a minim plus a crochet. A minim plus a crochet. That's the full value. Dotted crochet should be a whole crochet plus a quiver. The quiver should be, dotted quiver should be a quiver plus half of a quiver should be a semi-quiver. The semi-quiver dotted should be a semi-quiver plus the value of this dot is half of this, meaning it's a semi-demi-quiver, which has 3 flags. This is the value of a rest of a quiver. So this is a quiver plus the value for rest of a semi-quiver. This is a semi-breve, the rest of a semi-breve. So we shall have dotted semi-breve, we shall have the value of a semi-breve plus half the semi-breve should be a meaning, the rest of a meaning. Let us see the value of double dotted notes. Double dotted notes, as you have seen, will carry, the first dot will carry half the value of this note, and the second dot will carry half the value of this dot. So, as you have already seen, is that this being a whole note, will be extended to a half of itself and a quarter of itself. No? Let us see. In this exercise, you write, this will be a semi-brief, this will be a meaning, and this will be a crochet. This is a meaning double dotted, meaning this have a note, this should be quarter a note, this one should be an eighth of a note, being a meaning plus a crochet plus a quiver. These are crochet double dotted, meaning these are quarter, this should be an eighth, this should be a 16th, meaning this should be a crochet, should be a quiver plus a semi-quiver. This is the rest value of a crochet double dotted. Should be plus the rest of a quiver plus the rest of a semi-quiver. I know you know the reason as to why, because these are quarter rest, this should be an eighth rest, this should be a 16th rest. This is the rest of a meaning. The same case applies you are here. Double dotted, rest of a meaning. Meaning, this will give us a meaning, rest, plus a crochet rest, plus quiver rest. This one is a double dotted quiver, meaning we shall have a quiver plus a semi-quiver plus a semi-demi-quiver with 3 flags. And this is the rest of a quiver, double dotted rest of a quiver, meaning we shall have the rest of a quiver plus the rest of a semi-quiver plus the rest of a semi-demi-quiver. And generally those are the basic principles when it comes to valuing dots. That is the single dot and the double dot. I hope that you have learned something new about dotted notes. Continue learning with the music tutor. I wish you good learning.